Oh.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to tonight's live stream. My name is Katrin Becker. I'm the artistic director at the KINDL. Empathy and feelings in animals is the interesting subject of tonight's talk, and I would like to welcome our guests. First of all, I would like to welcome Dr. Karsten Brensing, who is a marine biologist, and he's totally into the subject. And also I would like to welcome Kati Rover. She is an artist, and with her work, Kati is participating in the exhibition Eistit Coming to Our Senses at the KINDL right now, that we did in collaboration with the Finland Institute in Germany, and it will run until June 20th. So please make sure that you see it before it closes down, because it's really a wonderful project. And also, I would like to remind you that there is a possibility to participate in a live chat where you can ask questions at any point during the talk, and these questions will be answered at the end. There will be English subtitles to the conversation shown below. Now I give the word to Michaela from the Finland Institute, and I wish everybody a pleasant evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Katrin. My name is Mikaela Mäkelä, and I work at the Finnish Institute in Germany. And we have had the pleasure of working together with KINDL while organizing the current Eistit Coming to Our Senses exhibition here in Berlin, like you said. So first, I would tell you a little bit about Eistit Coming to Our Senses, and then about the theme of tonight's talk, and then finally present to you our first speaker, Karsten Brensing. So Eistit is a one-year-long contemporary art program produced by 4 Finnish institutes, including our institute, and it takes place in 5 European cities this year and next year. We have currently exhibitions and installations in Berlin, London, and Paris, and later on this summer in Helsinki, and in the beginning of next year in Ghent as well. And you can find more information about the program on our website, eistitsenses.com, and on Instagram as eistitsenses. Our exhibition in Berlin is generously supported by the Alfred Kordelin Foundation, the Finnish Cultural Foundation, the Jenni and Antti Vihuri Foundation, the Ministry of Education and Culture in Finland, the Niilo Helander Foundation, the Saastamoinen Foundation, and the Estonian Embassy in Germany. And now we could go on to the theme of tonight's discussion. When talking about human beings, we take for granted that senses and feelings play such a central role in our lives. But what about animals and their sensory world? How much do we know about it? Are whales, for example, able to mourn? Do animals feel empathy? This talk sets out to examine the question what role senses and feelings play in the lives of animals. Finally, the discussion will also reflect on the consequences that these insights can have on our understanding of the relationships between humans and animals. So we are now going to begin with a presentation by Karsten Brensing, after which we will move on to Kati Rover, and in the end I will pose some questions to our speakers, and you will also have the opportunity to have your questions answered by them. So, Karsten Brensing is a German marine biologist, behavioral scientist, and author campaigning for a better understanding of animals. He specialized in marine biology in his studies. For his doctoral thesis in behavioral biology, Karsten researched the interactions between humans and dolphins in Florida and Israel, for example, in dolphin therapy. He worked for the NGO Whale and Dolphin Conservation for 10 years after graduating. His first children's book, What Do Animals Think and Feel, was awarded as the best science book for children in 2019 in Germany. Karsten is currently working on a new book about the animal past of humans. He's also planning his next book, which is about the sea. And to write that, he's planning a research trip around the world on a sailboat. So that doesn't sound bad at all to me. Please go ahead, Karsten. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much for that kind introduction. Yeah, just let me start my presentation. I hope that everything will work fine. 1 second. I think I just have to share my screen in advance. Okay. Well, here we are. And now let's go to my presentation and let's start it where we are here. Well, hopefully everyone can see what I have to present. And yeah, it's about empathy and feelings in animals. And what's all that about? You will be maybe surprised that if I'm talk about feelings and empathy, I also have to talk about thoughts and thinking, because this is very closely related. And in the past, we always had the clear differentiation between an instinct-driven animal and us human, we as highly cognitive developed beings with logic thinking and abstract thinking. So the differentiation between an instinct-driven animal and us were huge. The problem is that as close as we looked, and scientists looked for decades and we were searching for an instinct, but they couldn't find it. So there is no instinct. There is no instinct. But instead, we have something what is quite comparable. We have two mechanisms which drive or which steer our behavior. And this is our thinking and our feeling. And both mechanisms, the thinking related to our brain, to our nervous system, and the feeling more or less related to our endocrine system, both systems were developed long before mankind. No problem to see or to recognize that the ball is under a certain nutshell. And this is no surprise, because this ability, that cognitive ability, is very, very old. This is one of the first which were developed, because it's so important to know that something is somewhere. And we talk about mental pictures. So the mental picture was a thought. It was the first thought. And the first real thought may be the question from a predator: where is my prey? Because it has maybe that cat underneath. It has an idea, it has a picture, a mental picture in his brain, where he recognized, okay, the mouse were just here. It cannot be disappeared. It must be somewhere. And this is certainly a very important question. So not all animals can that, but all animals with a nervous system. So with the development of a nervous system, that kind of thoughts were possible. And that's why we are so confident that we can manage that kind of tests. And where that was happened very, very long ago, the whole process of thinking gets started. So where you had the first picture in your mind, you could combine that, you could play with that game, with that picture and with that idea. And then it comes to higher cognitive abilities, and for instance to something what is very high developed. I mean, beside of logic thinking and rational thinking and abstract thinking and whatever, which we also share with many animals. For instance, many animals pass the test of logic thinking, and I always say that it's it would be completely not logic to believe that the logic thinking of an animal is not comparable with the logic thinking of a human. So this is just an idea. But if it comes to higher cognitive abilities, for instance, to metacognition, we mostly believe that this is only our abilities. So no animal can do that. And it makes sense to believe this because we cannot have a look into the brain and into the functioning of a brain, but we can make quite interesting and smart experiments. And for instance, we made with rats experiments about metacognition. They had to make a decision just based on thinkings about their knowledge, and they passed that test as we human do. So since that, we know that even rats can think and reflect about each self. So, and this is quite impressive because you wouldn't expect that. And there's also other animals which are able to do this. And then it goes further with other abilities, highly developed abilities, for instance, the theory of mind. And the theory of mind is something where you have the ability not only to think about yourself, but also about others. So you have the ability to think what someone else could think or feel. This is the theory of mind. You can also test this, and many animals pass that test, but not all to the highest degree of that kind of test. The highest degree is a so-called false belief test. And that was until 3 years ago, all the scientists were saying, no, the false belief test can only be passed by a human. But then they made another experiment, changed something in the experimental design, and now we know that at least chimpanzees can also pass the test of false belief. So the difference are getting smaller and smaller. And what I have here is an impressive video, which I would like to share with you. It's a dolphin. It's a free living dolphin in Hawaii, and he is coming to the divers, which is a surprise because usually dolphins don't like to be touched. It's actually very uncommon, or very, very few seen. But that dolphin has a problem. He has a fishing line attached to him, and he probably has a theory of mind which gives him the ability to think, okay, I have a problem, but they are divers and they have tools. They can help me. And so he approached these humans and is very trusty and coming closer. And you will see he's just raising his knife to cut the thing. And this is unbelievable because it's a wild animal, and something like this is normally not observable. You may have the experience that a cat approached someone, but a cat was domesticated, even if it is a wild cat. Or you may see that the wolf or a fox is approaching people in the forest and asking for help, but that's mostly kids, that's not adults. But this is one of the very few examples where it's not, there's no other way to explain that behavior as that dolphin has a theory of mind and know now about the abilities of humans and about his own problem. Okay, and if we go ahead, then we come to another highly developed cognitive abilities, and then we are at the empathy. And most people believe that empathy is it's a feeling, but actually is empathy a process of thinking and of calculation. And it seems to be that we use our brain to create virtual brain in our nervous system, and it's kind of it's like a simulation. So we think about what someone else could think or feel, and we simulate that behavior and that feelings in our brain, and have then the ability to act somehow. Yeah. And one example which actually was really surprising for me, this is a trap, a mouse trap, a live mouse trap. And sometimes if I have in the summertime, if I have my door open, then the mouse are coming in here, and then they don't get out, so I have to catch them with that live trap. And usually that works fine. But once I was completely surprised because the trap was closed, the bait was disappeared, but there was no mouse in it. Instead, the mechanism of the trap was had a tiny stone in that mechanism, so the mouse could go out. And the only explanation for this was so unbelievable for me to that time that I made a research about it, because the only explanation was that there was other mouse out there, and that mouse had an understanding of the problem of the trapped mouse and was looking for a solution of that problem. And then it started to experiment. Around that mouse trap, there were several things. For instance, I don't know, dirt or whatever, but also some stones. And one stone fit in that mechanism, and so the mouse could go out. And then I had to research. I was looking for publications about this because I couldn't believe this. I really couldn't believe this. And then I found a publication which was done with rats, and the experiment was like this. So they had one rat trapped, and another rat had the possibility to release it. So they did it, and the rat figured out quite quickly how it could help the other rat. And if rat says thank you, they just go and cuddle the other rat. So the rat got cuddled, make a nice experience, and so on. And then the scientists thought, okay, we just do it again and again and again, and it was always the same. And then they thought, okay, maybe it's a kind of positive reinforcement. So the rat got the experience, oh, I get cuddled if I let them out. That's great, I like to be cuddled. And so they made a change in that experiment, and they brought a wall between the rats. So the rat could help the other rat, but the other rat, the trapped rat, could not come back and could not cuddle the other rat. And usually you would think that every reinforced behavior would slow down and would disappear, but it was not disappearing. And that was a proof that that rat was acting on empathy. It was not explainable with an easy mechanism like reinforcement. It was only explainable with a highly cognitive, highly developed ability. And then the people thought, okay, how can we make it a little bit more difficult for the rat? And they gave the rat two options. And the two options was, there is your friend, it's trapped again, you can help them, or you can have some very attractive food. Actually, rats like chocolate, and that was a very hard option. So guess what the rat would do? I don't know. I mean, I don't know if humans would act like this, but the rats helped their friends, let them out from the trap, and then they shared the chocolate. And this is empathy, a very highly developed cognitive ability. And I was completely surprised. I was flashed where I recognized this. And it surprised me more and more how similar humans and animals are. Even that highly developed abilities are somehow comparable. And yes, this is now I'm at the end, and I recognize that I'm a little bit over my time. I hope you can apologize this. If you have more questions, just visit my website, and then there are several books where you can choose for kids or for adults. And thank you very much for your attention. It was my pleasure to presentate that. And if you have any question, then go ahead further. So I stop sharing.
Yes, thank you, Karsten. I think we all learned something new there. Well, now we will watch a video clip from Kati Rover's video work, Salt of My Eyes. And after that, Kati will hold her presentation about the themes tied to the work in the form of an essay. So Kati Rover is a multidisciplinary artist interested in environmental issues and poetic storytelling. She combines her studies with different perspectives, For example, the interaction between humans and non-human beings, the natural sciences, and ecological and decolonial thinking. In her work process, she poses questions and tries to find answers and to understand the phenomena behind them. Kati is currently working on a piece that centers around care and hope in hopeless and challenging times. In her work, she approaches motherhood and the instinct of creating and preserving life from an eco-feminist viewpoint, seeing that as the driving force for the future. Now, enjoy the clip, and after that, the word is yours, Kati.
Yes. So I will read an essay I wrote for this presentation. In 2019, I had a dream about a whale, or I thought it was a whale. It was someone ancient who slowly faded into the blue darkness. I realized how little I know about whale species, and still I could not imagine my life without them existing somewhere in the deep blue oceans. I started to learn more about cetacean species and their cultures, also about the human history with whales. I found myself searching for a place where to go to and meet them. I found myself asking, is the whale a real being to me, or does it represent part of my internal psyche? Soon I found myself in Iceland, walking in the shorelines of the North Atlantic Ocean, looking for them in the horizon. In Norse mythology, humans are intertwined with other species and forces, and these perceptions are still alive to some extent within the cosmology of present-day Iceland. Oral traditions and storytelling that connects humans to landscapes and to other species continue to thrive, despite the distancing that literacy brought to most Western cultures. Icelanders also continue to practice whaling despite of a global ban. I have always been interested in the complex and mostly violent interaction that humans have toward other species, and there are plenty of these stories about the giants of the oceans. To capture the great Leviathan, the monster of the sea. Maybe it is our yearning to connect and communicate with other species, slowly forgetting how to empathetically communicate with others. Robin Wall Kimmerer in her book Braiding Sweetgrass describes, Philosophers call this state of isolation and disconnection as species loneliness, a deep unnamed sadness stemming from estrangement from the rest of creation, from the loss of relationship. As our human dominance of the world has grown, we have become more isolated, more lonely, and we can no longer call out to our neighbors. Our control and domination over the natural world is part of a delusional and alienated stance, preventing us from recognizing other species, sentience, agency, intelligence, emotional and communicative capacities. But we are sharing so much with other species, the same basics of life, similarity of our body parts, fluids, and emotions. Fish, amphibian, and reptile, warm-blooded bird and mammal, each of us carries in our veins a salty stream in which the elements sodium, potassium, and calcium are combined in almost the same proportions as in the seawater. This is our inheritance from the day, untold millions of years ago, when a remote ancestor, having progressed from the one cell to the many cell stage, first developed a circulatory system in which the fluids was merely in the water of the sea. I was already in my previous project, Coexistence, a video piece about Amazon rainforests, interested in connection of languages forming our knowledge about the environments, how we perceive the world around us, and how language affects our perception. The power and lack of words closing our world from otherness and other way around. To imagine a language is to imagine a form of life. Human languages have taken form within a range of terrestrial and coastal environments. All share the experience of gravity and horizontal rather than volumetric movement. The oceanic languages must be different in so many ways, and our understanding must be limited. Our sensory attunements are very narrow band through which parts of the world might be perceived. The milieu of the ocean offers an epistemological check on human knowledge formation, presenting entirely different condition of perception, sensation, and life than terrestrial environments. There are so much we can learn from the whales' watery cultures. When the song of humpback whales were released to the public domain in the 1970s, it was another kind of stunning encounter, not one that was terrifying, though it might be so also, but rather inspiring, that they sung something humans hold dear, one of our deepest, broadest, most complex, and yet most common arts of self-expression, forced us to confront consciousness beyond the human. That humbug singing changed everything. Sound is not something self-sufficient and isolated within nature. It cannot be for itself. So regardless of whether it's audible or not, it is always coupled with listening. Someone is always listening. Our conceptions of possible communications across species are limited by the positives approach of Western science. Imagine if the humpback whale songs are performed to a wide range of species audiences. After I finished my video, I had a thought that have not left me. Maybe certain dreams of animals communicate across the perceived lack of common language between species. These dreams we humans have had alter our ways of thinking, conducing research relating to more than humans, and extend arenas of communicative avenues across species. Are these dreaming and waking interactions valuable to us as modes of communication across species? Do they reveal some possibilities for relations within the more than human world that reflect greater commonalities than we acknowledge? Certain cultures provide a framework for understanding and valuing these experiences as aspects of communication and relationship that other cultures deny. Lacking of perception, a common languages with animals, Westerners tend to draw sharp perimeters of possible messages and shared meanings with other species. This perception is, to a large extent, culturally constructed, such as direct experiences, communications across species, bonds, and knowing the other in the equalized manner are hard to access. Cultural historian Maurice Berman calls this cultural lens a unitive trance of our times, in contrast to states of immanence described by anthropologists in indigenous cultures that offer more direct experience and communication with other animals, plants, and natural systems. Indigenous people tend to view landscapes, other species, and even aspects of landscape as possessing sentience, mind, agency, and abilities to communicate. Within some traditions, the human mind resides not within the brain or even within the person, but extends across species and is a unified aspect that makes interspecies communication possible. Grief takes many forms and differs greatly between individuals and cultures. Although grief is understood in relations to human losses, to grieve is rarely considered something that we do in relations to losses in the natural world. Although this type of grief is already being experienced, it often lacks an appropriate avenue of expression or for healing. Indeed, not only do we lack rituals and practices to help address feelings of ecological grief, until recently we did not even have the language to give such feeling a voice. Just as a grief over the loss of a loved person puts in the perspective what matters in our lives, collective experiences of ecological grief may coalesce into a strengthened sense of love and commitment to the places, ecosystems, and species that inspire, nurture, and sustain us. There is much grief work to be done, and much of it will be hard. However, being open to the pain of ecological loss may be what is needed to prevent such losses from occurring in the first place. My meetings with the whale species were special. They approached us, circled, watched, and looked at us sitting in a boat. They perceive and are curious about us. They see and remember us. Indeed, in this scene of high-intensity whale watching, some whale species are often said to watch or seek out humans. During the process of making the work, the most important questions eventually become how to restore something that has already been lost. Communication and connection between species. When I first met the whale, I experienced that curiosity was a mutual attempt to communicate and reach out to each other. So.
Thank you, Kati. That was a beautiful text. Now we could actually move forward to the questions part. I actually have an assistant with me tonight who is going to read through the questions that you possibly pose in the chat. So you can write on the right-hand side, there's this box where you can write your questions. So please go ahead if you have any questions for Karsten and Kati. Now is the time. In the meantime, I could actually start with a couple of questions from my side. So, first of all, it would be interesting to hear your thoughts on each other's presentations. What kind of thoughts did it evoke in you? Which one goes first? Karsten?
Okay, I can start. Well, yes, actually, there's so many things which touched me. For instance, in the video, I was working 10 years against noise pollution in the ocean. And so it's one of my most important issues. And I know so much about it. And it's so terrible what's going on in the ocean with our noise pollution. And just an example, the blue whales could 50 years ago, they could make a conversation in a distance of 2,000 kilometers. They right now they just have 100 to 200 kilometers where they can call each other. So it's really horrible what's happened to them, and that touched me. And I'm very open, and I'm happy about every artist or scientist who is grabbing to that issue and push that forward. We have to change something there. But another thing what touched me was the culture issue, because I think to talk about animal culture, it's somehow in fashion, but not many people knows about the implications about it. And one very important thing is our whole nature management, our population management is based on a completely outdated concept. We believe that if we have a population of animals and we can help maybe 95% of them to survive, and accept that 5% of the animals are catched or whatever, are dead. However, we believe that population is managed correctly. But if you have a culture that is not working like this anymore, because in a culture you have focus animals with a certain knowledge, and if you catch one important animal from that tiny 5%, you create an impact on the whole population. And this is completely different to the new management based on understanding of animal culture. It's completely different to that what we did in the past. And this is something what is actually really important. And right now the scientists discuss this, but it's not on a policy level. So this is just not on a policy level. So the real life is old stuff, but we really need to talk animal culture. And I'm happy, Kati, that you pushed that ahead and go for that. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, just a comment about the noise pollution. I actually met some marine scientists who asked me to make a 5 challenge this sound piece about the noise pollution, that the other scientists can experience how horrible it is. And because we can actually do something about that, like engineering some wall of bubbles and all that kind of things when they blow up and search for oil, for example, or other. So it was really interesting to hear that also scientists, other marine scientists, need to experience that. So it was very interesting. But yeah, it's horrible. I got a lot of material about the Baltic Sea situation. So not much silence left in the seas.
That's true, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Did this situation of the seas being polluted, did it come as a surprise to you, Kati, when you started working on this piece? Have you been interested in the seas before, or did it?
Yes, yeah. It was just before it was one reason why I started to work about the whales, because it of course it's a long history about whales coming out from the ocean, and I was contacted because I also work with the sound, and they had a lot of material about noise pollution, and I heard about even the engines of the small boat can make a horrible sound, which of course in the water goes great distance and affects it's many animals, not only whale. There's every animal has the ears, and you can't they can't close them. So it was, yeah, and it made me think about how we treat other species that we are not knowing about, how we affect, and also,
yeah. This is actually a good bridge to one question that came from the audience, that about grief. And it seems like the classic examples of animals grieving are elephants, whales, and apes. Does this seem to be an exclusively larger mammal phenomenon, What do you say?
I don't know, shall I make an answer or a first approach?
Yes, you can go on.
Okay. Yeah, this is actually a widely discussed and difficult issue because you really have to be careful what you are observing. Maybe you know that story that a dog was dying because his human died, and he just was so sad, and he was laying there not eating anymore, not drinking anymore, and he was just dying. So and people call that sadness or grief or whatever, and but the question is if it really an emotion what is comparable with with ours, and then the scientists were asking that question certainly too, and they made a kind of definition, and they point out that if the animal has a normal social life and is just somehow that concerning and special that body, then it's maybe a sort of grief. But it needs to be a normal social life, and that's the problem with a dog, because if an animal is losing the whole social community, it's lost. So it's just don't know what to do, and maybe we make an interpretation which is wrong because we don't know that. If you ask me from a personal point of view, I believe that many animals have that kind of emotions, but it's very hard to prove. We can prove it with chimpanzees, with great apes, with elephants, probably dolphins. There is no much discussion about it, that they feel quite similar to us. But with other mammals or birds, it's difficult. We just do not have the data and the observations to prove that.
Do you think that it's more difficult to research non-mammals, or is it just that you think that it has not been as interesting for researchers to research like in the past? What do you think?
No, I think the scientists are interested on that issue, but it's really, really difficult from the methodological point of view. You cannot make you cannot create experiments with this. I mean, you cannot take an animal and kill his friend just to observe how he reacts to that. Yeah, so that is just not, I don't know. I mean, morally, this is completely not possible. And observations in the wild are really quite few. We have a very interesting population in Africa from chimpanzees, and they prepare dead babies, and they teach each other to prepare dead babies so that they can carry them around over a longer time. And this is a kind of culture, and this is for certain and behavior which is absolutely comparable to ours if we lost someone or if we lost a baby, or so we would take care about that on the same way. So there are good reason to believe that there are no or that there are many similarities, but there's just very few examples for this.
Okay. Then there's actually another question on the same topic from the audience. It's addressed to Kati. So the question goes, Kati, how to do the grief work collectively? What do you suggest?
Yes, difficult. But actually, that is a question I have been thinking myself, and I have been thinking about that we don't have the place also, that the meeting place or like any kind of sharing culture about of course the funerals are what we know about, like the ceremonies around that and rituals, but I have been thinking about this kind of like sharing about like that people say that when you say that I'm sad about because something happened or someone died, we can like share that, because I have read about this research about like how the nearby forest, when somebody cuts them down, and what happens to the person who live nearby, and all the people share the same experience, the grief of losing a place, and they usually talk with each other about the loss of that place, and I think the sharing is the way, and I don't know how it can happen or where, but it's definitely something about that humans and true stories also. Sometimes maybe some story can like give us the strength to believe that we can also stop this grieving of losing places and species and all that.
Yeah.
But I don't have like any answer. I think I have been thinking about this maybe 7 years when I started with environmental issues. It came from the grief. So for me, it's like working with the themes that and searching for the roots of this problem.
Yeah. Do you have something on your mind, Karsten, about grief? Has that been topical in your work or research or life in general?
Life in general, certainly. I mean, my dad died very early, so I had some personal experience with that. From a scientific point of view, not really. So it's not. I'm just not focusing that much on that issue, just because of the lack of data. So it's interesting, but it's really difficult to research.
Yeah. Well, the example of rats and their ability to feel empathy was really interesting. Do you have some other special experiences that you would like to share with us?
I don't know. I mean, I can just explain what surprised me, because I was coming from working with dolphins, so that was the dream of my childhood. I wanted to make something with dolphins, and then from dolphins I came to great apes and elephants, to the highly developed, cognitive developed animals, and I thought, okay, they are highly developed, and then there's coming not much, and then somewhere some other animals also, and that changed in the last couple of years, because I learned so much about other animals. And for instance, over decades, scientists were looking for language in animals. They were looking at dolphins, at chimpanzees, at gorillas, at parrots, and so on. And they proved in experiments that animals are able to use a kind of grammar. But it was just in relation to humans. So no one could prove that a grammar is used in normal animal communication in the wild. So they tried to do that, but they did just not get the good data to do it. And the research is quite difficult. And then I got a very unbelievable surprise, where I got a paper which was about tits, and they they analyze their behavior, and then it came out that they use grammar. So they can put a sentence in a certain order, and then they understand each other. But if you make playback experiments, and if you change that order, they do not act anyhow. So they just don't understand that sentence, that message. So, and that was the first proof that grammar is used in the animal kingdom, in the wild. And I was always expecting to see that with dolphins or with elephants or whatever. And no, it was just the tiny birds. Yeah. So this is that was kind of interesting and surprising for me.
Yeah, it is. And actually, speaking about language, you mentioned something, having thoughts about language and that relating to the feeling of otherness in your previous work, Kati, right?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, it was about, I made a work about the Amazon rainforest and like this blindness to the green species, vegetable, the green, like plants. That we don't speak about the plants, like how like kind of like not seeing them, and like lack of discussion, and like how we like form a knowledge about them. So I was thinking about like how indigenous people in the Amazon rainforest, Brazilian rainforest, like had their own way of speaking and sharing about information around like surroundings. And
yeah. All right. Then let's see if we have any more questions. As a kind of like a wrap up, it would be interesting to know that what kind of impact has your research, Karsten, and working as an artist on these topics, Kati, had in your on your lives? Has it changed the way that you navigate in the world on a day-to-day basis somehow? Maybe Karsten can go on first.
Okay, I just wanted to be polite. I mean,
Yes.
I always okay.
Take turns.
Well, certainly it's changed. Every experience changed, and I had one scientific surprise which changed me really, and that was where I started my PhD, and it was about the interaction between humans and dolphins in swim programs. And in the first place, I observed that dolphins like to stay close to humans. That's what I wrote down, and I wanted to prove that in a scientific way, and I wanted to prove that the dolphin-assisted therapy has an impact, and positive impact on the treated patients. But in fact, it was quite the opposite. What I observed was that I was on that pool, and I had 8 people and 5 dolphins in the pool, and my eye was jumping from one interaction to another. And after that half an hour, I had the feeling, okay, they really like humans. They approach them permanently. But after a statistic from 1 year observations, it's proved completely the opposite. Because our eyes are programmed to jump from one interaction to another. And that gives me the impression that there was always something was going on. But the statistic could prove that this was just some occasions. All the other time, they were actually trying to avoid the humans. So it could prove the complete opposite from my observation with naked eye. And this is something that was hard for me to get, but also to understand, because you believe on your observations. And it's right now it's hard because I always push people to make to humanize animals on a positive way, because I say we share so much evolution history, and all the thoughts, the cognitive abilities and all the feelings are developed long before mankind. So we share so much with them. But on the other hand, we have to be so careful that we do not put too much in our observation. So it's very, very difficult. And I have no solution for that problem. Just be curious and be careful.
Yeah. Maybe I comment on that. I totally agree about that. When I was working with my video piece, it was so impossible almost not to like to see them. Like I started as thinking about the whales, that they can only be a whale because there is so much history and stories about whales, and when I meet a whale the first time, it was it wasn't that pleasant experience. I was expecting something like else, but yeah, it was escaping. But then it was a harbor whale, and they are quite shy. because of the hunting and all that. But definitely we should be open-minded. But why I decided to make a piece about humpback whales, because they came to the boat and showed their skills, how they were like fishing and all that. So I felt this kind of like interest to my presence there. And yes.
Yeah. Well,
and definitely, yes, maybe that like each work I have done, always something changed, because I'm like starting from my own need to understand something, and through that, for example, I learned that humpback whales are like thriving and they are like quite well, but nobody knows about the future. So I'm a bit, because I kind of like fell in love with that whale species, and now I'm thinking about the future. I hope that it's better for them also.
Yeah. One last question to Karsten. What do you think that where is the research going? As I understand, the knowledge of animals having feelings and being able to feel empathy is increasing, but what do you see as important for the future to be still looked at in that sense, or like researched at?
Well, I think I could answer that from two perspectives. One perspective would be the general public, and I think that we just need to change our perspective of animals. We just need to stop the clear differentiation between humans and animals. We all are animals, but if it comes to the real life, to the everyday life, to everyday thoughts and feelings, I believe that there's not much difference between us and animals, because most of the time we do not use our highly developed cognitive abilities. When do I think about myself? So when do I ask me philosophical questions? I'm just doing that maybe on the weekend if I have some time, but mostly I'm occupied with my kids. So in my normal life, there's no much different to that feelings and thinkings what animals may have. And another interesting thing, I don't know if you was asking for this, but I think I would like to push that, because it goes in that direction. We always think that language is such a big invention of our humans, and the tits and also now other birds show me that grammar was developed also in the evolution, not only by us humans. And we start now to use artificial intelligence to analyze animal language. And this is just in the first steps, it's just baby steps. But I'm pretty sure that in just, let's say, 2 to 3 years, the first publication concerning that issue will come out. And I'm pretty sure that this will be very impressive results. So
yeah, that would be
to see what's going on.
Really. Yes, well then, Kati, do you still want to add on something, or?
Maybe about the animal language. When I was in the Amazon rainforest, I met a scientist who worked with the sound artist to record the ant language. So they had like equipment, and it was just started, and he was super excited about that they learned, because he was saying that it's the most like special and important species in the Amazon. So I don't know what comes out of that, but definitely he thought that they differently speak with each other.
Okay, well, the future will.
Yes.
All right, well then, now it is 8 o'clock here in Berlin, and I think we should unfortunately wrap it up now. We could go on for many hours, but it has been really interesting with you two. Thank you very much for the discussion. And thank you everyone who has been watching. It was a wonderful event. And I hope to see you all who can make it to Berlin. I hope to see you at KINDL soon. at our exhibition. So now I wish everyone a good night.
Good night too.
Good night.